All right, welcome back. We're bringing to you now the second half of the conversation on education, the International Day of Education. I've been joined in the studio now by two guests, the head of Media and Communications for Skills Outside School Foundation, Mr. Benny Atsua, and Promise Abolarin, his Research and Economics Associate Officer, Tungsten Group. They're both in the education sector, and they're here to share more light, on the International Education Day. Welcome, Mr. Benny. Welcome, Mr. Promise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll start with the basics. What does the International Day of Education mean, and why is it important, particularly in 2023?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much for that question. For the International Day of Education, basically is that day, that special day that the United Nations has decided that, okay, hey, this is the day we want to spotlight issues around education and possibly look at areas where we need to pinpoint what is the progress like, what is the story like, what are the things that need improving, and where are the gaps, and what are the successes recorded so far. So it's a day to recon and then look for a way forward and for the future of education altogether. So
that's fair enough. I'd like to get your take there, Mr. Promise.
Yeah. The International Day on Education is an opportunity to refocus people's attention to education, which is paramount, right? Get people to, again, think about it and take critical actions to improve education, both in Nigeria and globally.
So you believe it will go past just talking?
Yeah, most importantly, talking is not enough. Action is really what we need.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it back to you, Mr. Benny. From what you can see, the indices available. Yeah. What can you say about investing in people and prioritizing education?
Well, thank you once again. Yeah. So apparently, we can all agree that we are not satisfied. We're not satisfied with the level of education in Nigeria, to be precise. We have insecurities everywhere we go. We can equally allude that to gaps in education being part of the responsible causes of, these things. But apparently, we also have experienced some very interesting days in the past couple of months. I think just about last year, ASU went on strike for a long period of time. That is also one of the very prominent indication that there is a great gap in education. And apparently we have issues of infrastructure. We have certain states where some infrastructures are not available. And even in the ones that we have, to a degree, relatively fair infrastructure, we still have issues around how they are used. Are they being maximized? Are they delivering the best value possible for students and for teachers as well? So I think it's too obvious for everyone who is able to see that there are gaps in the educational sector in Nigeria, even though my hope isn't to just point out what the gaps are, but also to, furthermore show the progress that has been recorded so far. But without a shadow of a doubt, there is a bit of a gap, or a lot that we can possibly say.
All right, but are these the gaps you mentioned, are these the places you feel the investments should be made? And when I'm talking about the theme where it says investing in people, who are these people? Is it the persons receiving education or the persons giving it? In what way would it work, really?
Okay. Yeah, so invested in people, prioritizing education, it's a broad statement, okay, that doesn't quite specifically say, hey, this is the people that we are saying you should invest in and prioritize rather. So there are a number of people along the line that need to be catered to, need to be paid attention to, need to be taken care of to say that education cycle is complete and is delivering the best value. For instance, the students who are the receivers of education in this case are also very fundamental. And then we have the teachers who are delivering this value to students, who are also key resource people to look into. And then we have say, the founders of education, if I can use that term. So when I started saying what I said that if we look at insecurities in Nigeria, we can equally allude that to education to being one of the reasons why we're having some of these gaps. So let's say that we had a society or we had a system that paid very close attention to education and gave its best to education and ensured that the young people who are the receivers of the education, instead of having the free time which they should use to be in school to wallow away in certain areas that will ultimately not add to the development of a nation or to themselves either, that time may not be given to them, but rather the education will be made available to them. So instead of staying off course and thinking of 1,001 things that you could do with your life, which would not be of any value to you or the society, you have education which is, judiciously training you, equipping you with a competent mindset to become a better version of yourself and become a contributor in the society. So, yes, these three.
All right, that's fair enough. So the question now is, how can stakeholders contribute to ensuring, quality education is made available and delivered to the students? I'll take it to you, Mr. Promise.
And that's a very important question. And it flows from their ability to actually identify what the challenges are. And I will say primarily the challenge education really is in its inability to actually meet the needs of these primary stakeholders that Mr. Benny has highlighted. I mean the students. The students are no longer satisfied with the education they receive, such that obviously we hear things like education is a scam. They are no longer satisfied with the education, so they leave school feeling less valuable than they were before coming. The teachers, given the ASU strike that Mr. Benny also highlighted, are no longer satisfied with the function and the structure of education. Parents as well, I'm sure if you ask them, they will tell you they are no longer satisfied with their children having to go to school for 8 years, 7 years, when they're expected to be there for 4 years, and afterwards they're not as valuable as the parents would expect them to be. So really, those are the challenges. But what is the solution? There's a term catching up now in the education space, and which is entrepreneurial thinking. It is the ability to create value, influence, and profitability wherever you are. And it's for key stakeholders, and now I'm pointing to everyone. I'm pointing to the students, I'm pointing to the parents, I'm pointing to the government, and even the teachers must find ways to create value, influence, and profitability wherever they are. So, for example, for each student in school, they must be seeking value. Now, we must help them understand that the education they receive is valuable. And this is the challenge, because the youth these days say education is no longer valuable. It no longer meets their needs. And I think one key responsibility primary stakeholders like ourselves have is to reconnect, do that reconnecting, help them to see the value in the education they get, help them see how it leads to profitability, right? And there's one key stakeholders we usually forget to talk about, and are those who employ labor. Because the observers, really, they are not involved right now, and that is one important solution that we need to bring into the education space. We need to involve the employers, because they wait. Now they are just observers. They sit and wait. The students go through the educational process. They do all of that, and then they come back to them and they look. Though the school certified them to know, but the employer says you cannot do, so they don't get the job. So we need to bring the employers in, right? Get them to be involved in the educational process. That way, by the time they are leaving the school, the employer is part of those certifying them and saying, okay, come then. They easily get the job. So the students easily see the value in the process. So I think that's one thing we can do to really solve the problem. Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's an interesting idea, especially because there is the growing belief that any job is doable, because whatever you know beforehand, you get training for that job whenever you're about to start. But that being said, what can you say are the innovations, that can be made in the education space right now?
Right. Okay. So we are a growing nation, and there are many resources and tools and infrastructures that are not necessarily available to a lot of schools in Nigeria. And so I think we would start by simple things. What would we say? What kind of infrastructures are we talking about? Let's say access to internet. Okay, so with the growing number of, or with the way the world is going, traditional learning as we had it in a couple of years ago is not going to satisfy anymore. You have young people daring to learn things, AI, robotics and coding and all of that. As good as this sounds in the urban regions of Nigeria, it's not the same thing in the rural areas, right? If you go to the states, some states don't even as much as, what's it called? They don't even have internet connections. Okay, so someone was telling me a story the other day that they went to Katsina State and tried to make a call. The person who took them there would have to go some distance away to stand on a certain hill to make a call. Now, there are schools in these areas. How do you think learning will be like in that place? What are they going to be learning with? What are the kind of influences that they will be having outside of the region where they are learning? So learning just happens. It's not a one spot thing. So for us to be able to arrive at an improved individual, an improved student in Nigeria, we need to make access to, say, internet available to states that don't have that. But we also can think of other innovative ways, like, say there are none of these availabilities in these states that I've mentioned. What if we come back and decide that we're going to get tablets, for instance, and then upload in them certain up-to-date learning materials that these students that can be imported or taken to these students, so they learn with them for a particular period of time, and when that is beginning to become obsolete for the need that it should serve, it can come with, they can be retrieved and updated. So and then of course this could perhaps be solar powered, so you don't have to rely on electricity, which is not available also in some of these states to power it on. So I think some simple things like this, not simple necessarily, they're pretty expensive, but they're achievable if we keep calling the word stakeholders, but if those who care about education and those who have the power to influence what the outcome of education in Nigeria becomes, if they're interested enough, they can invest more in it, and we can see to it that this is achievable and this is possible.
All right. Those are very interesting ideas there. So let's just end with this. Your final words to your listeners on the topic. Whoever, like we said, stakeholders, whoever you want to speak to, perhaps the persons receiving the education, those giving, and everyone else. What would you like to say to them as a final note?
Well, I'd like to say learning is a very interesting thing. And at every corner you turn, there's learning going on. So I would say first to students, we don't have to rely on what we're getting in schools only. You can take mentorship with someone, you can apprenticeship happen, take to that. You can learn, if you have access to the internet, YouTube can teach you a lot of things. Look out for materials, identify certain things you want to improve in, and go for it. The information is available to you. And of course, parents, try and make available some of the things that these students would need within safe observation of course, adults to carry on learning. And then, of course, finally, to, let's say, the organizations that have the capacity to fund education, we can do more.
Thank you so much. Let's get your final words there.
I will conclude by emphasizing what Mr. Benning said. Everyone needs to invest in education. I mean, everyone, literally everyone, every stakeholder, the learner, the teacher, the parents, the governments, the NGOs, everybody needs to do something about the education they receive and that they give. We need to add to the value that is education currently gives. We need to help people connect And everybody needs to take that responsibility for themselves. Find the connection between the education that you're receiving daily and the future that you want for yourself. That's the way we all put intention and effort into improving education.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming and for speaking on the International Day of Education. I know you've been here before for the International Day of the Girl Child. So this is sort of a passionate thing for you guys. So thank you very much for what you do, and thanks for coming today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
All right, that's all we'll take on the program. Do join us some other time for more discussions. Tomorrow we'll still have a few more thoughts and events and reports still on the International Day of Education. But that's all we can take for today. Thank you very much. Bye for now. I am Amadine Obere.